November 23, 1944, Valdris Forest, Northern Sector. The field communication device trembled in Captain Ingrid Kellerman's gloved hands as she documented an observation that would have earned her immediate court-martial for spreading defeatist propaganda if discovered by military intelligence. Our artillery positions are disappearing, not to aerial bombardments we can anticipate, not to ground defensives we can counter, but to something that strikes with mathematical precision in under 3 minutes. Through the reinforced observation window of Command Post Zeta-7, Kellerman had witnessed an impossibility that defied every principle of artillery warfare she had learned at the Hannover Military Academy. Battery Nordwind, concealed beneath camouflage netting 3 kilometers southeast in the dense pine forest, had commenced their standard fire mission at 08:47 hours. 4 rounds from their 105mm howitzers had screamed toward enemy infantry positions. Then, at 08:50 hours and 15 seconds, the forest erupted in a coordinated explosion that turned 37 skilled artillery women into scattered remains and 6 precision-manufactured guns into twisted metal sculptures. What haunted Kellerman wasn't just the speed of the counterattack, but its surgical precision. No reconnaissance aircraft had been detected by their radar stations. No enemy ground forces had penetrated the defensive perimeter. The meteorological conditions were perfect for sound travel, yet no incoming artillery shells had been heard until the moment of impact. Battery Nordwind had simply ceased to exist between one heartbeat and the next. In the preceding 120 hours, the Women's Artillery Corps' 3rd Regiment had experienced catastrophic losses that challenged the fundamental assumptions of modern warfare. Major Elena Richter's 1st Battalion had lost 11 complete battery positions, each following an identical pattern: commence fire mission, maintain normal operations for 150 to 180 seconds, then complete obliteration. Captain Marlene Weber's 2nd Battalion reported similar losses: 8 batteries destroyed with such precision that secondary ammunition explosions were contained within predetermined kill zones. The pattern was becoming undeniable, yet remained incomprehensible to experienced artillery officers who had survived 3 years of intensive combat operations. Lieutenant Colonel Greta Hoffman, commanding the regiment's technical analysis section, had compiled detailed after-action reports that painted a picture of impossible enemy capabilities. Accurate counter-battery fire arriving within 2 minutes and 45 seconds of first friendly shot. Targeting precision that could distinguish between primary gun positions and decoy installations. Coordinated strikes that seemed to anticipate German displacement procedures. What German intelligence officers didn't understand, what even their most experienced artillery commanders couldn't conceptualize, was that they faced an integrated fire control system that had transformed counter-battery warfare from an art into a mathematical science. The enemy had developed what their classified documents termed acoustic-to-impact, a technological revolution that could detect, calculate, and destroy artillery positions faster than experienced gun crews could complete their standard fire missions. The mathematical principles underlying this system had been perfected through 18 months of intensive development by a team of female scientists and engineers working in absolute secrecy. Their breakthrough represented the convergence of acoustic physics, mechanical computation, and telecommunications technology into a weapon system that operated with the precision of a Swiss chronometer and the lethality of a medieval executioner. The architect of Germany's artillery nightmare was Dr. Catherine Morrison, a former Cambridge University mathematics professor who had been quietly recruited by Allied intelligence in early 1943. Her initial assignment appeared mundane: analyze German artillery tactics to improve Allied defensive positioning. However, Morrison's mathematical mind recognized patterns that escaped military strategists. German artillery doctrine relied on mobility and concealment, principles that had proven effective against conventional counter-battery fire. Traditional counter-battery warfare required visual observation, manual calculation, and sequential communication protocols. The time delay between enemy first shot and friendly return fire typically ranged from 8 to 12 minutes, adequate time for German crews to fire their mission and displace to alternate positions. Morrison's revolutionary insight was deceptively simple: eliminate human reaction time through mathematical automation. If acoustic detection could pinpoint enemy gun positions within seconds, and if mechanical computers could calculate solutions instantly, and if pre-coordinated artillery batteries could deliver immediate response, then German mobility advantages would become irrelevant. Working alongside Major Sarah Sterling, a former Bell Laboratories acoustics engineer, and Captain Rebecca Hayes from the Royal Signals Corps, Morrison developed a system that integrated multiple detection methods into a single, coordinated response network. Their prototype demonstrations in the Scottish Highlands during summer 1944 achieved targeting accuracy within 15 meters at ranges exceeding 12 kilometers, with response times averaging 2 minutes and 20 seconds from enemy first shot to friendly shells on target.
British operational name, Flash to Splash, reflected its core principle. The moment German artillery revealed their positions through muzzle flash and acoustic signature, Allied counter-battery fire would be en route to deliver devastating splash damage before German crews could complete their fire missions. The flash-to-splash system represented a technological marvel that combined cutting-edge equipment with mathematical precision. 6 acoustic detection stations, designated Alpha through Foxtrot, were positioned in a hexagonal configuration across the Allied front lines, each station separated by approximately 4 kilometers to ensure optimal triangulation geometry. Each acoustic station consisted of 4 precision microphones arranged in a diamond pattern, connected to mechanical calculation devices that could process sound waves with unprecedented accuracy. When German artillery fired, the acoustic signature, a distinctive pressure wave traveling at 343 meters per second through standard atmospheric conditions, reached each station at slightly different times measured in milliseconds. The mathematical calculation that followed was elegantly simple yet devastatingly effective. 3-dimensional triangulation, performed by Morrison's custom-designed mechanical computers, determined exact source coordinates by analyzing the time differential between acoustic arrivals at multiple stations. The calculation required precisely 847 mechanical operations and could be completed in 28 seconds by trained operators following Morrison's standardized procedures. Simultaneously, radar operators, using modified detection equipment, tracked the ballistic trajectory of German shells, providing secondary confirmation of gun positions and additional data for trajectory calculations. The radar systems, originally designed for anti-aircraft operations, had been recalibrated by Sterling's engineering team to detect artillery shell flight paths rather than aircraft signatures. Communication between detection stations, calculation centers, and artillery batteries utilized a revolutionary telecommunication network that connected acoustic stations, radar units, and gun positions through encrypted radio channels operating on multiple frequencies. The network could transmit targeting data, coordinate firing solutions, and confirm target destruction within seconds rather than the minutes required by traditional communication methods. Allied artillery batteries, typically consisting of 8 155mm long tom guns positioned 6 to 10 kilometers behind front lines, received firing solutions through direct radio transmission from Morrison's fire direction centers. Each battery maintained continuous readiness with preloaded shells, pre-calculated powder charges, and crews trained to achieve firing readiness within 45 seconds of receiving targeting orders. The mechanical precision of the system eliminated human error and reduced response time to its absolute minimum. German artillery crews, following standard doctrine that assumed 8 to 10 minutes before counter-battery response, found themselves under accurate fire before they could complete their third shell in a standard 6-round fire mission. The initial German units to encounter flash to splash believed they were facing supernatural enemy capabilities that defied the laws of physics and military probability. Captain Ursula Brenner, commanding the 2nd Battery of Artillery Regiment 447, recorded in her official diary on November 15th, "We commenced fire mission at 09:20 hours against enemy infantry positions approximately 8 kilometers northeast. Standard procedure, standard timing, standard displacement plan. At 09:22 hours and 30 seconds, enemy artillery began falling directly on our position with accuracy that suggested precise advanced knowledge of our coordinates. Sergeant Kruger and Corporal Schmidt were killed instantly by the first salvo. Private Müller lost both legs to shrapnel. Impossible that enemy could achieve such rapid response. Brenner's battery had executed textbook Wehrmacht artillery doctrine developed through years of combat experience on multiple fronts. Fire 6 rounds from primary position, immediately displace to alternate position located 800 meters southwest, establish new firing position within 4 minutes of last shot. The doctrine had proved effective against Soviet, British, and American conventional counter-battery fire throughout the war. Flash to splash delivered Allied counter-battery fire in 2 minutes and 38 seconds. Brenner's crew managed to fire exactly 2 rounds before enemy shells began impacting their position. The surviving crew members discovered their alternate position under equally accurate fire before they could reach it, indicating enemy knowledge of German displacement procedures that should have been impossible to predict. The psychological impact on German artillery personnel proved as devastating as the physical destruction of equipment and personnel. Lieutenant Maria Richter, a forward observer attached to the 76th Infantry Division, wrote in a letter to her sister dated November 18th, "Our artillery cannot provide support without signing their own death warrants. The moment our guns fire, enemy counter-battery destroys them with precision that seems guided by divine intervention. We advance without covering fire, knowing that calling for artillery support means sending our gunner comrades to certain death." Artillery crews, traditionally the backbone of German defensive operations and the foundation of combined arms doctrine, began experiencing unprecedented rates of psychological breakdown and disciplinary problems. Battery commanders reported increasing incidents of crew members refusing direct orders, deserting their positions, and in extreme cases, sabotaging their own equipment to avoid firing missions they believed were suicide orders.
British veteran non-commissioned officers who had survived the brutal artillery duels at Stalingrad, the massive tank battles at Kursk, and the desperate defensive fighting during the retreat from Ukraine, declared that Allied counter-battery fire possessed supernatural characteristics that exceeded human capabilities. Sergeant Major Gisela Hoffmann, a 22-year artillery veteran, told her commanding officer, "I have served through every major engagement of this war. I have seen artillery miracles and artillery disasters, but this is not warfare. This is execution by invisible executioners who know our positions before we occupy them." The fear spread beyond artillery units to infantry formations that depended on artillery support for defensive operations and offensive preparations. Infantry commanders began refusing to request artillery support, knowing that the response would bring immediate and devastating counter-battery fire that would eliminate friendly artillery assets without providing meaningful support to ground operations. German artillery doctrine had evolved throughout the war to emphasize rapid displacement and unpredictable firing patterns as primary survival methods against enemy counter-battery fire. Experienced crews prided themselves on their ability to establish firing positions, deliver effective fire missions, and displace to alternate positions within minutes rather than hours. Captain Brunhilde Hartmann, commanding the 4th Artillery Brigade's Tactical Development Section, implemented innovative countermeasures designed to confuse and overwhelm Allied detection systems. Her batteries adopted shoot-and-scoot tactics that involved firing single rounds from multiple positions in rapid succession, theoretically preventing enemy forces from tracking individual gun locations before displacement could be completed. The result was catastrophic for German artillery capabilities. Morrison's flash-to-splash system operated with sufficient computational capacity to track multiple simultaneous targets and coordinate multi-battery responses. When Hartmann's batteries fired from 4 separate positions within a 3-minute window, Allied acoustic detection identified all 4 locations and coordinated counter-battery fire from 6 Allied artillery battalions that delivered simultaneous strikes on all 4 German positions. German communications specialists attempted electronic countermeasures designed to disrupt Allied coordination and communication networks. Technical Sergeant Anna Kruger's Signals Intelligence Unit broadcasted radio interference across multiple frequencies, hoping to prevent Allied detection stations from communicating targeting data to their artillery batteries. The flash-to-splash communication network had been designed with multiple redundancy systems and automatic frequency switching capabilities that defeated conventional electronic warfare techniques. When German jammers targeted primary communication channels, Allied equipment automatically shifted to backup frequencies without interrupting tactical operations. When backup frequencies were jammed, the system utilized tertiary channels that German intelligence had not identified. The most desperate German countermeasure involved coordinated mass artillery strikes designed to overwhelm Allied counter-battery capabilities through sheer volume of simultaneous targets. On November 20th, Colonel Marguerite Steiner, commanding the 352nd Artillery Regiment, concentrated 62 guns from 3 battalions for a massive barrage against Allied positions near the village of Bergheim. The mass artillery strike represented the largest German artillery concentration in the sector since the failed offensive operations of summer 1944. Steiner's plan called for simultaneous firing from all positions, followed by immediate mass displacement to pre-surveyed alternate positions located 4 to 6 kilometers from primary firing positions. Morrison's detection network tracked all 62 battery positions within 75 seconds of the first German shot. Coordinated counter-battery fire from 9 Allied artillery battalions, totaling 72 guns, delivered simultaneous strikes that destroyed 58 German guns and killed over 480 artillery personnel in what German survivors would remember as Black Monday, the single most devastating artillery loss in regimental history. The psychological impact of Black Monday spread throughout German artillery units across the entire front. Word of the disaster, despite official attempts at censorship, reached every battery commander within 48 hours. Artillery units that had maintained reasonable morale despite previous losses began experiencing complete breakdowns in military discipline and operational effectiveness. By late November 1944, German artillery effectiveness in the northern sector had declined by 81% compared to operational standards maintained during summer 1944. Battery commanders who had previously averaged 12 to 15 fire missions per day were now averaging fewer than 3 missions, and those were conducted with the expectation of immediate counter-battery response that would likely destroy the firing unit. German intelligence officers began recognizing patterns that indicated systematic Allied technological advantages rather than random tactical successes. Major Elizabeth Cromer, commanding the 7th Army's Artillery Intelligence Section,
compiled detailed analysis reports that documented the mathematical precision of Allied counter-battery responses and the technological sophistication required to achieve such consistent results.
Kramer's intelligence reports, classified at the highest security levels, concluded that Allied forces possessed detection and calculation capabilities that exceeded German technological capacity by several years of development. Her analysis identified acoustic detection, mechanical computation, and coordinated communication as the primary components of the Allied system, but German technical capabilities were insufficient to develop effective countermeasures. The realization that German artillery doctrine had become obsolete overnight created panic among senior commanders who understood that artillery support was fundamental to German defensive strategy. Without effective artillery, German infantry units would be unable to conduct coordinated defensive operations against Allied offensive preparations. General Ingrid Rommel, commanding Army Group Center's artillery coordination, requested immediate technical assistance from German research institutions and industrial facilities. However, the technological gap identified by Kramer's analysis required resources and development time that Germany could not provide during active combat operations. Intelligence reports from other sectors began revealing that flash-to-splash operations were not limited to the Northern Front. Similar patterns of rapid artillery destruction were being reported from the Central Sector, the Southern approaches, and even from units operating in reserve positions previously considered safe from enemy counter-battery fire. Captain Helga Müller, commanding the 8th Artillery Regiment's communications section, intercepted Allied radio traffic that suggested coordinated counter-battery operations across multiple Army group boundaries. The intercepted communications indicated that Allied forces had deployed integrated detection networks covering hundreds of kilometers of frontline positions. The scope of Allied counter-battery capabilities began to suggest strategic rather than tactical advantages that could influence the outcome of defensive operations across the entire theater. German artillery, which had previously provided the backbone of defensive doctrine, was becoming a liability that attracted devastating counterattacks without providing meaningful support to ground operations. As November transitioned into December 1944, German artillery forces faced systematic annihilation that threatened the fundamental basis of German defensive capabilities. But the full scope of flash-to-splash remained hidden from German high command. What had appeared to be isolated tactical setbacks would soon reveal itself as the complete technological obsolescence of German artillery doctrine. The mathematics of German artillery destruction were being calculated not in dramatic explosions visible to frontline observers, but in the precise mechanical elimination of gun crews who never understood what killed them. In command bunkers across the theater, German officers were about to discover that their artillery arm, the foundation of combined arms doctrine, had become a weapon that killed its own operators faster than it could damage the enemy. The systematic nightmare was just beginning, and the women who operated Germany's guns were about to face a technological revolution that would transform artillery warfare forever. The enemy had turned mathematics into murder, and time itself had become Germany's greatest enemy. The flash-to-splash system had been revealed, turning German artillery from protector to executioner. What began as isolated battery destructions in November 1944 was about to become the systematic annihilation of an entire military doctrine. The mathematical precision that eliminated individual gun crews would soon cascade into the collapse of Germany's defensive capabilities across multiple fronts. By December 1944, the secondary effects of artillery paralysis began rippling through every aspect of German military operations. Infantry divisions that had relied on artillery support for 3 years found themselves conducting defensive operations without covering fire. Tank units advancing without artillery preparation became easy targets for Allied anti-tank weapons positioned in prepared positions.
Captain Ingrid Kellerman, now commanding the remnants of 3 decimated artillery regiments, documented the systematic breakdown in her classified reports to Army Group Headquarters. German infantry commanders were refusing to advance without artillery support, knowing that requesting fire missions guaranteed the destruction of friendly artillery units without meaningful tactical advantage. The psychological warfare aspect proved even more devastating than the physical destruction of equipment. Lieutenant Ursula Brenner, one of the few surviving battery commanders from the November disasters, reported widespread desertion among artillery personnel. Experienced gun crews were abandoning their positions rather than face certain death in counter-battery exchanges that lasted under 3 minutes. Supply difficulties compounded the crisis as replacement artillery pieces became increasingly scarce. German industrial production, already strained by Allied bombing campaigns, could not replace sophisticated artillery systems at the rate they were being destroyed by flash-to-splash operations. Each destroyed battery represented months of manufacturing effort and years of crew training that could not be quickly replaced. The ripple effects extended beyond pure military considerations into the realm of strategic planning. German defensive doctrine, developed through years of combat experience, assumed artillery support for infantry positions, tank formations, and logistical operations. Without reliable artillery, every aspect of military planning required fundamental revision that German commanders were unprepared to implement during active combat operations.
Artillery losses in the affected sectors reached catastrophic levels that rendered entire regiments combat ineffective within weeks rather than months. The 352nd Artillery Regiment, which began November with 48 guns and 1,200 personnel, ended December with 6 operational guns and 180 surviving crew members. Casualty rates approached 87% over a 6-week period. Comparative effectiveness analysis revealed the mathematical precision of Allied counter-battery operations. German artillery units required an average of 8 minutes to establish firing positions, conduct fire missions, and displace to alternate positions. Flash-to-splash delivered counter-battery fire in an average of 2 minutes and 34 seconds, eliminating the mobility advantages that German doctrine had assumed. Ammunition expenditure ratios revealed additional technological advantages that compounded German difficulties. German artillery consumed an average of 43 rounds per destroyed target, while Allied counter-battery operations averaged 6 rounds per destroyed German battery. The mathematical precision of flash-to-splash eliminated the trial-and-error adjustments required by conventional artillery fire. Time analysis demonstrated the fundamental shift in artillery warfare that German doctrine could not accommodate. Traditional counter-battery engagements lasted 20 to 30 minutes, allowing multiple displacement and counter-displacement cycles. Flash-to-splash reduced engagement duration to under 4 minutes, eliminating German mobility advantages through technological superiority. Steiner's alternative approach involved deploying artillery pieces in groups of 2 rather than traditional battery formations, hoping that smaller signatures would escape Allied detection systems. The result proved even more devastating, as flash-to-splash tracked individual guns with the same precision previously applied to battery-sized targets. Allied flash-to-splash networks tracked 197 of the 203 participating German batteries within 90 seconds. Coordinated counter-battery fire from 12 Allied artillery battalions destroyed 184 German guns and killed over 1,400 artillery personnel in what became known as Der Schwarze Tag, the Black Day. The remaining German artillery capabilities in the sector were effectively eliminated in a single engagement. By January 1945, German artillery had ceased to function as an effective military force in sectors where flash-to-splash operations were deployed.
Artillery units that had previously provided the backbone of German defensive doctrine were reduced to scarce resources used only in emergency situations where immediate tactical advantage justified certain destruction. Intelligence reports from unaffected sectors revealed that Allied forces were expanding flash-to-splash deployment to additional fronts, suggesting that the technological advantages demonstrated in the northern sector would soon be applied across the entire theater of operations. The flash-to-splash system remained largely unknown to post-war historians because its effectiveness eliminated dramatic combat footage and visible battlefield destruction. Unlike infantry assaults or tank battles that created obvious visual evidence, counter-battery warfare occurred at distances that prevented photographic documentation of the technological revolution. Dr. Catherine Morrison's mathematical breakthrough had revolutionized warfare through applied acoustics and mechanical computation, yet her contribution remained classified for decades after the war's conclusion. The women who developed and operated flash-to-splash received minimal recognition compared to personnel involved in more visible military operations. The technological principles pioneered by Morrison's team influenced post-war artillery development across multiple nations. Acoustic detection, mechanical computation, and coordinated communication became standard components of artillery systems developed during the Cold War era. The human cost of technological warfare, represented by the German artillery personnel who died in mathematically precise exchanges, highlighted the changing nature of military conflict, where technological superiority could eliminate traditional military advantages within months rather than years. Captain Ingrid Kellerman's final report, discovered in German archives decades after the war, provided the most eloquent assessment of flash-to-splash impact. We were defeated not by superior tactics or greater courage, but by mathematics applied with mechanical precision. The enemy turned our own weapons against us by making the act of firing artillery equivalent to suicide. Technology had transformed warfare from a contest of skill and courage into a mathematical equation where human factors became irrelevant. The 670 artillery pieces destroyed by flash-to-splash operations took with them Germany's ability to conduct coordinated defensive operations. Each battery eliminated in under 3 minutes removed years of training, months of manufacturing effort, and the tactical flexibility that had sustained German defensive doctrine throughout the war. The story of flash-to-splash remained largely untold because its victims died quietly, precisely, and without the dramatic battlefield heroics that captured post-war attention. Yet in that very precision lay its revolutionary impact, proving that future wars would be won not by courage or determination, but by technological superiority applied with mathematical certainty. The women who operated German artillery died facing an enemy they never saw, killed by weapons they never understood, in a technological revolution that transformed warfare forever.